What's method chaining in JavaScript? Back in the days when jQuery was really popular, there was one way of writing APIs, JavaScript APIs, which a lot of libraries adopted, and jQuery including. For me myself, the first time when I saw this pattern was actually in this library, jQuery. So how this looks like? Well, jQuery is a library which was used to do DOM manipulations, to manipulate DOM elements by animating them, moving them, replacing their container, and stuff like that. So everything starts with selecting a DOM element, and it was done like that. You have this dollar sign, which is basically the library itself, and then you pass a selector, and now you have the DOM element. So then you are able to apply different operations on this DOM element. Like for example, fade in, maybe fade out, and maybe add class, for example, selected or something like that. So I kind of in general like this API. And this is the so-called method chaining. When you have an object, which is this one at the moment, there is a method which returns the object itself, which means that I could call another method of the same object, and then another one, and then another one, and so on. And it saves a little bit of typing, and it makes the things looks a bit easier to read. So how to implement something like that? Well, let's start by defining an object called car. And this object will have a method, for example, setModel, where we'll pass, for example, some text, and then we'll say this model equal text. And maybe we'll have another method which is moving forward, and then we'll just print out something saying the car is moving forwards. Maybe we have print model as well, which will print out the model of the car is, and then we print this model. So in order to have method chaining of these three methods, we'll have to return the object itself, which in our example means that here I have to return this, here again I have to return this. And there is always, at least for me when I was implementing this pattern many times, there is always something which doesn't need to be actually in the same fashion. Sometimes we have methods which are defining different setup for our operation, and then we want to run the operation, and then we want to have some result back. So for the sake of this example, I'll keep print model as it is without returning this. But usually when we work with this pattern, there is always a method which needs to output something, needs to return something, and then we can't return this there. And this is where the pattern is broken, because after the print model, I can't call again the other methods like moving forward and set model. So this is maybe the only limitation of this pattern that I know of. And then below we could say car dot set model, maybe this one s, then moving forward, then print model. And when I save, I'll see the console log from moving forward, and then print model is using the actual model that we set. So this is how the pattern looks like. Usually I'm writing in a slightly different fashion. I don't have just one singleton object very often. I need to create multiple objects with the same API. So if we say that this car is a function, then we have to return these methods as kind of an API of our newly created object. So I'm very often creating a variable constant called API. And the API contains this method, so I return the API. And usually I'm following this approach mainly because I don't want to write this keyword. So here instead of this, I may write API. Here the model is just a constant or a variable. Well, in this case should be a variable at the top. So here I should return API, and here I should use API as well. And now this is becoming a function which I create. Then I get, every time when I call this function, I get a new version of this car object. And then I'm able to use the chained method in the same way.